What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome back to MKO Boxing, aka MKO Pugilism. So let's get into this one. So yesterday we had I think wasn't exactly a launch press conference, but the latest in a series of press conferences for Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev for all the marbles at light heavyweight. But the highlight of the press conference that everybody's been talking about was the epic rant by Chris Eubank Jr. Now, Chris Eubank Jr. was there. Obviously, he's having his fight coming up there on the card on October 12th. And he was asked a question by Adeola Depot. He was doing the sort of MCing or compare for the evening for the press conference. And he posed what seemed like a harmless question, which was, "Oh, Chris, good you're back. I'm glad to see you back. You're now with not Sauerland. What am I talking about? You're now with Ben Shalom, but you're now with Boxer. So why Boxer?" And then that's all it took. Chris Eubank Jr. then goes on quite the rant to essentially call every promoter except for Ben Shalom and, of course, His Excellency Scumbags. So he said, he started off saying, Frank Warren behind me, scumbag. He sued me for a few 100,000. I wasn't going to go with him, because they asked him, well, why Boxer? Why sign with him? And, he said, yeah, Frank Warren, he's a scumbag. He's been doing this and doing that. He's been basically conning his way through boxing. Some words to that effect, that Frank Warren has been conning his way or cheating his way, I think was his words, through boxing for the past couple of decades. So insulted Frank Warren and said he's behind me. And Frank Warren bit on that, and he got mad and said, look, why don't you fight Hamza Shiraz, you scumbag? And Frank Warren also, well, Chris Eubank was talking. He said, "What? Speak up! I can't hear you." Chris Eubank then went on to. He started by dissing Frank Warren. He said all these other promoters apart from Boxer are scumbags. He said Frank Warren, and Frank Warren said, "Well, why don't you fight Hamza Shiraz, you scumbag?" And Frank Warren said, "How long we got to listen to this scumbag?" He then Eubank went on to raise his voice and say, "Yeah, excuse me, Kalle Sauerland, scumbag. Um, they've been extorting money out of me or squeezing money out of me," I think was the terminology he used. They've been squeezing money out of me, putting me in slave contracts and all this and trying to hold me into a contract. They used words such as slave deals, implying that he's been involved with some sort of slave deal or unfair deal with Sauerland Promotion, with specifically Kalle Sauerland. He went on to rant about Eddie Hearn, his claim with them, which I think is a true claim, is that Conor Ben, Eddie Hearn, to be honest with you, yeah, from what I remember at the time, Eddie Hearn was still trying to make the Conor Ben fight as around, but where I think Chris Eubank Jr. was mistaken was that I think the news about the test came to Eddie Hearn around pretty much the same time as everyone else. So I'm not sure that he was sort of well aware of Conor Ben failing like way beforehand, before the fight. I think his notice was pretty much similar to everyone else's. So, but anyway, according to Chris Eubank Jr., he said, "Yeah, look, Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith, who Frank Smith is his brother-in-law. He's married to Eubank Jr.'s sister." So he said Frank Smith's a scumbag, Eddie Hearn's a scumbag. They were trying to make the Conor Ben fight with me in spite of the fact that Conor Ben had been popped for steroids. They were still trying to scramble and rescue the fight. And I think there's some level of truth to it, I suppose, because they were trying to rescue it or revisit it from what I remember at the time. I'd have to go back and look. But Yeah, so essentially everyone but Ben Shalom, who he said, Ben Shalom's a cool guy, and His Excellency is the only guy that's not, that I know is not a scumbag, because he's a man of religion, he's a man of God, and that's what matters to the Saudis. His Excellency is just about the best fighting the best, and it pretty much concluded there. And yeah, everyone was going on about it. Frank Warren then went on Talksport. I believe it was today, because today's when I heard it. And Frank Warren said he's already successfully sued Chris Eubank Jr. for some sort of contractual breach, where Chris Eubank Jr. breached a contract of some sort. I believe that's what he said. And he said he's getting ready to sue Chris Eubank Jr. again. He goes, he's going to get sued again for what he just said, because you can't say things like that without backing him up. So Warren on Talksport was hyped up. I mean, even before he got to speaking about Chris Eubank Jr., um, the mere fact that one of the hosts on Talksport, I think he's a ex-footballer, he's this guy spoke up and basically quoted Chris Eubank Jr. And Frank Warren was straight on it and said to him, "Yeah, don't you talk like that. Don't you mention those words, because I will sue you too. You know, you and everybody else who uses such words against me." So it was essentially, Warren was essentially threatening to also sue Talk Sport to go after them. He said, "Well, you know, you're sort of co-signing, or some words to that effect. You're kind of co-signing what Chris Eubank Jr. is saying by quoting it. So by you saying those words, I'll have you too. I'll sue you too." And the guy was, pretty intimidated by that. He was saying, "No, no, I'm not. These are not my words. I'm just quoting them." But Warren was like, "No, no, you don't say them words, otherwise I'm gonna get you too." So that was where it was kind of left. Frank Warren threatening legal action against Chris Eubank Jr. For what he said. But then today it's come out. So that was all. I think that was all earlier today. I sort of got wind of this. The press conference would have been yesterday and all that. But then today there's been two things. Firstly, that Frank Warren came on about he's going to sue Chris Eubank Jr. But then later today, we've got the I think it was a statement or a tweet from Chris Eubank Jr., who turned it around and said, "Look, I want to apologize for what I've said about Frank Warren, for what I've said about these guys, and I want to apologize, and I want to retract my full statements." Specifically about Frank Warren, and he wants to withdraw, he wants to retract. So he basically wants to give up those claims, and he's basically admitting defeat. He said, "I just want to concentrate on my boxing. I want to take back the statements that I made yesterday." Frank Warren then followed up and said that he's not going to go any further. He sort of apologized for if he'd offended Chris Eubank Jr. at all, and he said he doesn't want to take any further action. He just sort of wants to move forward, and he looks forward to seeing Chris Eubank Jr.'s career. So it's kind of crazy, really, because from one day to the next, within, I want to say, less than 24 hours, we've gone from Chris Eubank Jr. having an explosive rant, then to, Frank Warren responding at the time and also after, claiming he's going to do legal action. Then we've got Chris Eubank Jr. apologizing and Frank Warren accepting the apology, and also saying that he apologizes if he's offended Chris Eubank Jr. So that's what the news is thus far. For me personally, I think this is interesting. I think I see Chris Eubank Jr.'s reasoning, because obviously he doesn't want to get in a lawsuit, because he probably can't back up what he said. His words are there. That's how he felt, but he probably couldn't back it up. But then Frank Warren's apology surprised me, because he seemed dead set on going after Chris Eubank Jr. legally. And I think, much like some others, I think Boxing Beats and Rhymes was saying that this could be a case of Turkey al Sheikh sort of going after these guys, sort of knocking their heads together and saying, just clean it up, just basically clear it up. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the situation. And until next time, it's MKO Boxing over and out. Yes, little one.